Well, hello friends and fans everywhere. It is your fitness captain, Jason, speaking again here. It's a lovely day in Canada. It's beautiful out. We've had some amazing weather in Hamilton, Ontario. Today I want to speak about the UFO phenomenon. And I've put it out on other videos speaking about it, and we're going to try again right now. This time I may post this on Facebook, as well as my YouTube channel. You guys can find it, and ladies, at Fitness Captain Estey, E-S-T-E-Y. That's right. But seriously, this is a very multifaceted, complex, multi-layered subject, but again, very profound, very important subject, and I'm going to tell you why. So it all started in 1897. We had the airship mysteries, which I believe was a secret German society. And the reason is, we had these airships in 1897, but then in the 1930s, and nobody still knows exactly who had those airships in the skies in 1897, by the way. That was about, I think, 5 years before the Wright brothers put out the airplanes, you know, and invented the airplane. So that was kind of interesting, very interesting. And then in the 1930s, of course, this is where it really goes back with the technologies, the amazing sophisticated technologies. The Germans were far ahead of the US and Russia and all countries. Everybody knows that. It's well documented. For example, they were working on all kinds of different propulsion systems. It's also documented they were working on a project called the Bell, and it was shaped like a bell, and it was more classified, more secret, higher than the atom bomb. This is a well-known fact. And there were some concentration survivors as well that remarked on the Bell project that had seen it. It apparently had levitated. It didn't fly. And other people had seen this Bell project as well. And there were a lot of scientists involved. Many scientists were killed. Actually, every single scientist basically that worked on that project were killed. Just anybody can look this up, folks. So this is some history that you need to know. The Germans were brilliant scientists, and of course, what happened? Well, by the time the 1940s arrived, of course, in 1947, I believe, we had Operation Paperclip and brought all those brilliant scientists, or most of them, to the United States, and Russia got some as well. And I always say that's when technological progress really amped up. Really revolutionary technological progress. Because, you know, I always say the dark fleet of those 1930s gave rise to amazing technological development, progress. So it's just amazing. And so what happened? Well, in 1947, of course, we had the Roswell crash. I believe that was a Nazi UFO that crashed. And if you connect the dots and read any of Joseph P. Farrell's work or some of his books, he talks about, not in this book, but he talks about, he has one that's specifically on the Roswell incident. And I love Joseph P. Farrell, folks. He's a prolific author, great scholar and historian. What I like about him, he doesn't jump on the alien bandwagon. 99% of UFO researchers jump on the alien bandwagon, put that as an alternative, but it's really not. I mean, I always say, too, I also have a romantic chiasma in my body and my mind, wishing that we were being visited by aliens, wishing that some of these unidentified flying objects with the UFO phenomenon were aliens, but it's not. Now, maybe we were visited millions of years ago, I hope so, but these UFOs that are zipping along above Earth's atmosphere, seen by thousands of people as well, right here on Earth and in space, that is all the military-industrial complex. And again, it started in the 1930s with the Germans. Also, I've talked about Antarctica before on other videos. I don't know how many of you have seen that video. It's very, very important because in the 1930s, the German elite societies, of course, headed by Hitler, and then there was Rudolf Hess, who was head of the Nazi Party, the Fuhrer, right, underneath the Fuhrer. He and Admiral Goring, who I believe was the secretary under Rudolf Hess, they took out a huge fleet of Germans to Antarctica. And they did it not just once, not twice, but at least 3 times. They went to Tibet as well. And, you know, it's a well-known fact that Germans were very interested in the esoteric back then. I think they were trying to find out, indeed, is there an ancient civilization in Antarctica like Atlantis or some other technological advanced society back, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not a million years ago or so. And it's also known, well-known fact that Antarctica, whether it be, there's reports either 100,000 years ago, it could be up to a million years ago. At one point, anyways, it didn't have any ice. It was not covered with ice. And if you go by the Paris map, I believe it's called, P-E-I-R-E-S, it's a Turkish map, it shows Antarctica with no ice. And it shows Atlantis in and around the area, possibly, of Antarctica. This gets very complicated, but I won't get into that right now, other than I will talk again later on about the bizarre list of people that have been going to Antarctica recently, okay? So, and also in 1954, it's also very important to note, friends and fans, and you can all look this on YouTube, the whole world knew about this fleet, seemingly, of UFOs that were above Washington Capitol. I mean, there were lots of pictures of it. These unidentified weird flying objects that weren't supposed to be in the U.S. airspace. Of course, no jet planes are supposed to be able to, you know, cross the most secure airspace in the world. And yet in 1954, it was shown to the world. These UFOs showed themselves to the world. And I believe that was the military's way of showing, look what we have. We have conquered anti-gravity. And this is our amazing technology. Because, friends and fans, I say this because, sorry if I sound so serious, it's a serious subject. But no, in 1954, I believe that's when the breakthroughs came in anti-gravity. And pardon me, I think maybe it was in 1957, that famous case with the UFOs above Washington was seen basically by the world. I'll have to double check that year, but it was definitely in the 1950s. By 1954, I believe, is when the breakthroughs in anti-gravity happened, in and around 1953, 1954. And the reason I say that is any researchers, and you guys can look this up for yourselves, that it was known fact that scientists were telling about their excitement of anti-gravity, that they were going to make these breakthroughs. They believed that people you know, flying these discs would be able to go thousands of miles an hour on almost almost stop like from a dime and just accelerate thousands of miles an hour within seconds. They knew they were on the cusp of doing that. And this was read, and you can read that in magazines. It was in the public specter, but then all of a sudden it went black. You didn't hear about it anymore. So what does that tell you? That tells you, it's a sunny day. It tells you, no, that the military had already conquered anti-gravity. So it went black. Okay, they made the breakthroughs then. And it started with T. Townsend Brown, for example. He worked for the U.S. government. He was a scientist. He did all kinds of experiments showing the gravity systems and how they work. He was breaking through with anti-gravity. And then he started working, there's documents to support that he actually started working secretly with the government. So he was sort of the inventor, carried on with those experiments that the Germans started in the 1930s, and T. Townsend Brown also did experiments and made some breakthroughs. So you better believe, friends and fans, that we have things way beyond rockets that are way, way more powerful than rockets. Of course, you can't get to the stars with rockets. And rockets are destroying our atmosphere. I repeat, rockets are destroying our atmosphere and ozone layer. It's just ridiculous how you get historians like Robert Zimmerman, who's a space historian, space writer, military writer. He talks about the public space program. That's all he talks about is rockets. And he'll say, well, rockets are more sophisticated nowadays. They're so sophisticated. Give me a break. It's dinosaur technology, friends. I get so amped up and exasperated and angry about this almost because it's ridiculous. The whole world should have access to this anti-gravity, the gravity systems. It's not really anti-gravity, but it's basically the same thing where we're able to manipulate the gravity systems so that these UFOs which are all kinds of different shapes and sizes. You could see it on, anybody could see thousands of them on videos on YouTube, flying around in space, flying right here just in the skies all over the world in different countries. We had the Belgium flap, for example. We had the case in Utah, in the 1990s, right? That the governor of Utah even had to come out and he said he had seen the huge triangle as well, that thousands of people in the US had seen in Utah. And it was about 1 mile to 1.5 miles wide, friends and fans. It was incredible. Well, that was the military, I'm convinced, putting out their amazing technology, again, for the world to see. Of course, they're not going to tell you what it is, but it had no sound. These triangles that have been seen all over the world, friends and fans, all people will hear sometimes is a little humming sound. Other than that, it's totally silent. And we're not supposed to have things like that. Conventional aircraft, you don't have things like that. So back to the gravity systems. This is very important because you could see YouTube videos where even these triangles, the spacecraft and discs, you'll see them, all of a sudden they turn a right angle, going thousands of miles an hour. You can't do that. It's a known fact with conventional aircraft because the pilot would be killed by the G-forces, and they can't make these angled turns either. So that shows you there's this anti-gravity involved, because if you can manipulate gravity, and I believe these UFOs are manipulating gravity by about 80–85%. When you do that, the pilot only feels like a little bump he may feel in the cockpit. That's it. So that's the kind of technology we've had for decades and decades and decades. And we started putting even more fleets of UFOs, I believe, by the late 1980s to the 1990s. But like I said, then you got the incident back in the 1950s where they had some UFOs above Washington, D.C. That was the military-industrial complex again. And I hope to talk on this video, if I got enough time on my phone, I'm going to talk about the military-industrial complex, friends and fans, because they have gone out of control for many, many decades. And I think if you talk to a lot of the elitists out there, they will admit there's been way too much secrecy. And I say that because too much secrecy really breeds corruption, doesn't it? I mean, and they've got way too much. I mean, I can understand why the military wants to keep and needs to keep certain things private. But when you've got this anti-gravity that has been around for at least 60 years or more, the whole world, we should have access to that technology. Again, cars wouldn't need to rely on gas or electricity. We'd be able to power up homes with some of these free energy technologies. And there's been many scientists that have come out with these free energy technologies, and it's been suppressed time and time again. Can make a whole video just on that. It's really, really sad case for our society. But back to the military-industrial complex. So Truman, back I believe it was in 1947 or 1950, he created the national security state, which in a large part I think was the result because of that incident at Roswell and trying to get a hold of that UFO phenomenon and find out where are these aircraft coming from. And again, it's German technology. Truman created the national security state, which involved, of course, creating the CIA, the NSA, FBI, all these intelligent apparatus, which, you know, breeds, again, a lot of secrecy, a lot of power, and of course that is all goes in conjunction with the military-industrial complex, right? Truman, later in his life, I learned, he regretted that decision. Well, too late, you know, he created that. So the military-industrial complex, what I'm trying to say, friends and fans, between the military and these intelligence services, they largely control this world. So when I talk about the military, and if I sound negative about the military and some of the things that they do, I always want to qualify that by saying that they do a lot of great work. I'm sure some of the intelligence services do a lot of great work as well. There's a lot of great military folks, for example, but again, there's way too much secrecy. I mean, we've got hangars that are documented. They're about at least 500,000 to 750,000 square feet. So God knows what they have in these hangars. Obviously huge. I think some of those huge black triangles are in some of these hangars, whether it be Area 51 and bases all over the world. Speaking of bases, my friends and fans, another book that is excellent that I finally bought is called Underground Bases and Tunnels, with the author is Richard Sauder, and he specializes in trying to get documents, the bases that are documented under the government. And there's many, many bases, of course, that he can't get even documents to, but it's a known fact that we've got bases all over our national parks. We got bases underneath the oceans. I mean, this is where the trillions and trillions of dollars that go missing every year, much of that money is going to underground bases, and much of it, I argue, for sure is going towards our secret space program. You heard the words correctly, friends and fans. If you don't know that we have a very, very sophisticated, massive secret space program that has been going on for decades, if you weren't aware of it, you're aware of it now. And I want you to go to YouTube. I want you to listen to some of the secret space conferences out there. We've got, again, prolific authors like Joseph P. Farrell. He also covers the secret space program. He's trying to track the trillions of dollars. Where is it going? It's going away from the public sector, the private money. A lot of this is, some of it's drug money. A lot of this is Wall Street. I mean, the banksters. This money, it's a complicated financial system, infrastructure. Really, the financial industrial complex has been put into place many decades ago, and the U.S. is a large part of that. Probably countries like China as well is involved. It's trans-international, friends and fans. Russia, you name it. So we just have to, you know, if we're not going to have access to anti-gravity, I say we stop dumping the trillions of dollars in the industrial complex. And while we're dumping the trillions of dollars, we should have access, again, to these technologies, friends and fans. This is your taxpayers, your and I's taxpayer money that's going towards these programs. And a lot of these black projects, the workings on a lot of these ships, for example, technologies, sometimes they get scrapped. And it's documented they've spent billions of dollars on certain projects and then it gets scrapped. They don't need it anymore. And they're on to something else. You know, it goes on and on and on. But I give the military-industrial complex credit and human ingenuity in that we have things that, again, just would blow your mind. I'll give you an example. Ben Rich, who was the head of Skunk Works, Lockheed Martin, it was founded by Kelly Johnson in the 1970s, I believe. Ben Rich, who died in the 1990s, he was the head of Lockheed Skunk Works, I think, for at least 18 years. He made some amazing comments at a speech before he died. He said things like, we have the technology to take ET back home to the stars. And he really was using a metaphor for us, in other words, to go back to the stars. He said, we're just missing an equation, but we figured it out. And he said, it won't take a lifetime to do it. Isn't that an amazing statement? Unbelievable. He also said that if you think of technologies in Star Trek and Star Wars, think of those shows, we've either been there, done that, or knew it wasn't worth the time and the effort. So think about that, friends and fans. What an amazing statement. The technologies of Star Trek and Star Wars, we've been there, done that already, or didn't think it was even worth the time. I mean, that is unbelievable. We can get to the stars. I mean, it's unbelievable with the technologies that we have. And you're not going to do that with rockets. You're not going to get to the moon very quickly with rockets, are you? That Saturn V in 1963, even then, that was kind of dinosaur technology in a way. And I say that because we had if you go back to the years I was referring to, remember I said 1954, 1953, we made the breakthroughs in anti-gravity, starting with the Germans in the 1930s working on the Bell Project. So in 1963, when the astronauts went to the moon, there's circumstantial evidence, friends and fans, that we were already there. The military had already gone to the moon. When Kennedy's telling the world about our public space program and NASA, and we're going to get to the moon, that's all fine and dandy, but the military were already there. And I say this, and I know this, because even, I think her name is Carol Rosen. I mentioned her name on another video before. She was very high up in NASA. She's a woman of intellectual integrity and intellectual honesty. She had overheard Armstrong behind closed doors tell a friend, basically, in so many words, that there were huge menacing aircraft on the moon. Basically saying that they were sort of warned off. So, and the astronauts, they can only say so much in public, friends and fans. You know, they're threatened by the government. They can't say very much. So, and a lot of evidence to support they're probably put through, you know, certain programs where the government wipes away their memories. And it's called MK Ultra. If you know anything about MK Ultra, friends and fans, it was a secret project done by, I believe, the CIA for quite a few decades before whistleblowers came out. It's horrendous experiments done. Let me just wait till these people go. As I was saying, MK Ultra, you can give thanks